Hello, I am thrilled to talk about sex with you all today, but it's not going to be about me. It's my guest, Dr. Prudence Hall. And she is the full picture, whole body gynecologist turned functional medicine. And we are going to be talking all about how to stay sexy in menopause and the process of staying sexy in the action. And if you haven't felt sexy before, well, you're going to learn how moving forward. We're going to talk about what happens to women in menopause and why you lose your sex drive, how to reignite the role that hormones play, and so much more. Welcome, Dr. Prudence Hall.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Well, it's so exciting to begin the conversation after we've already had some time to get to know each other a little bit. And I can already see the next interview in my mind, but we're going to focus on right here and right now. So tell us a little bit about your journey from being a gynecologist, an obstetrician, a surgeon, to where you are now.
Well, thank you. Yes. So I started off as a gynecologist. I'm here to serve women. I grew up in a family of four girls and during the women's movement. So I thought women would be ideal serving women. So this was really the push for me to become a gynecologist and really loving nature and loving to nurture life. I was always like that. So it really was my passion. And once I exited my gynecology residency at USC, Keck School of Medicine, and my residency there, I thought I was pretty hot in terms of knowing knowledge. I was ready to serve. I was on top of it. I mean, saving women's lives and crash C-sections and, everything that we saw there, which was pretty intense in terms of the residency program. And then I went on private practice and started meeting my menopausal women. And they were desperate. I didn't know, and I hadn't learned in my residency how unhappy menopausal women are and what was really happening with them. At USC, there was a big emphasis on infertility, but we had a menopausal clinic and do one lab value. It's called the FSH. If it's elevated, put them on medication, see them in a year. So it was inadequate. So patients said, Prudence, you've got to fix this. You've got to fix this. We're crying. Nothing works. And that started really a lifelong journey into the exploration of what happens to women in menopause and why do we fall apart starting so young. And it's been hormones, hormones, hormones for really 4 decades now.
Wow, you are truly a pioneer. I mean, people were not really talking about the benefits. And even 20 years ago, there was still so much fear about hormones and hormone replacement. But we're here to give women hope today.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Why? Because there is great hope, because this is the second opportunity to become really our great version of who we are. And men don't get that chance. I don't think men get that chance unless they're really, really concentrated on performance and on who they are and their purpose and all that. But I think that we as women, out of the misery and out of the pain, out of the suffering, we can recreate ourselves like the phoenix. I see it time and time, thousands of times. I mean, thousands and thousands of times.
Well, I love talking to you about this because I use the Phoenix analogy so often, and I've seen my friends go through it. And people that are at the start of it, they think you're going to be in those ashes forever. And you need to have hope and know you're going to get through this and you are going to rise and find your voice and your purpose and this fulfillment and meaning in life. But now we're going to get into talking about the impact of these hormones on our sex drive.
Perfect. And they certainly do affect our sex drive.
It does. So let's dive into what is really happening in the perimenopausal to menopausal shift. And
Mhm.
maybe we need to break that up since that's two very distinct phases of before menopause and post menopause, because we know some of us are going through perimenopause for 1, 5, 10, up to
Sure.
15 years
Yes.
before we're really finished with that menstrual cycle. Where would you like to start on talking about our sex drive?
Well, I think one of the most important things is to recognize that perimenopause starts very early. It can start, and frequently can start, in our mid 30s. So when women come into me saying, I just am more tired, my sleep is interrupted, I've gained 10 pounds, and I start to talk to them about sexuality, and they say, well, we still make love, but it's not the passion that I once had. So this is perimenopause, and it can be quite pronounced. It doesn't have to be just sort of a little prelude to menopause. And then menopause starts around 44 to 48, 49 maybe. So that's the big bulk of menopause, starting 10 years earlier than it used to when I started out in 1982. And there are a number of, I would say, factors that come together in perimenopause and menopause that cause women to feel less sexual. And estrogen, which is the primary female hormone, keeps our vagina moist and lubricated, so sex feels easy and pleasurable. So when women start to lose their estrogen, and by the way, this happens on the birth control pill too, that puts us into a pseudomenopause, it starts to hurt. So lots of women are ashamed of that and feel like that might be unique to them. But no, it's unique to, I would say, 80% of women who feel that sexual intercourse hurts and they sometimes tear, they get urinary tract infections, they get vaginal infections, and this is a real negative deterrent for sex. So that physical thing happens. And also our orgasms are less strong because as we age, unless we really take care of our core muscles, and our core musculature, that the pubococcygeal muscles that cause orgasms are becoming weaker, and especially after childbirth. So they become weaker. And what causes an orgasm? The contraction of the pubococcygeal muscles right at the base of the vagina. So that becomes weaker. And women tell me all the time, I just can't have orgasms. And women are hesitant to talk about their sexuality because it's been taboo for so long. Women aren't supposed to have sexuality. And so their orgasms are less intense, which, higher pleasure, wanting to seek out that behavior more, lower pleasure, wanting to avoid it more. And also it takes so long to have orgasms that women feel that they're working at it and it's too much work. So those are some of the physiological factors that happen. There's a lot of emotional things too that can occur.
Oh, I definitely want to talk about the emotional aspect as well. I just wanted to kind of summarize, if I was understanding, that the complexities of sexual desire impacted not only by hormones, which are then impacting the pain, discomfort, urinary tract infections, vaginal infections. And if you're bleeding or sore or then having a UTI after, you are certainly not going to be inspired to initiate and enjoy. And if the pleasure of the orgasm has diminished, that's also going to impact a woman's ability. And I hope the male listeners are paying attention to this, to be more understanding to the partner, because that's going to have a significant impact. Is there anything you'd like to add to that piece?
Well, I would say that menopause and perimenopause is a big transition for women in terms of their lifestyle. So frequently the children are older, they need less attention. Sometimes they're starting to go off to college. And our responsibilities and our role model, I mean, our role that we've chosen at this point in our life is changing dramatically. So women can feel less well about themselves in this transition. Transitions are hard for a lot of women, and we're transitioning from being a mother and also working for lots of women, but the mothering is very intense and being the wife is very intense. So we have a lot of different roles and we're taught to multitask at a young age. So we feel less well about ourselves. We wonder, what's my role now? And I'm not needed and I need more attention from my mate who is off and busy and who perhaps has not been as involved with the children as we have been. So women are feeling more depressed, more down about themselves in general, regardless of the hormones. And we also gain a lot of weight. So we'll gain 30, 40 pounds in menopause. I see 60, 70 many times. So when we gain that weight, it just adds the layer to not feeling great about ourselves and feeling less sexy and less. So many women say, I just can't show this body to my husband or to my partner. I feel ashamed.
Wow, the emotional layers that you just brought up, self-esteem, identity shift, the role pivoting from focus on the children and they are launched or maybe off at school or starting a new career, and kind of the pressure cooker on the relationship. And before we started recording, we talked a little bit about seeing this trend of people who have been married over 25, 27, 30 years, their marriages falling apart at these times. And it sounds like the hormone shift is part of it, the role and identity shift is part of it, the confidence shift that one partner might be having more confidence. And for women out there, the more they gather with other women who are going to encourage them to rise up and speak up and find that strength and confidence again, then it seems what I've noticed is that then they're able to maybe alter their eating habits a little bit, figure out what movement needs to change. They get their hormones checked by a professional, and then things start to shift and they start to look better, feel better. And not that our identity and feeling good and confident needs to be related to our weight and a number, but those factors all impact how sexy we feel and present ourselves.
That is absolutely true. And as women, we tend to take care of a lot of people. And this time of perimenopause and menopause, it's really essential to start giving back to ourselves and nurturing ourselves. And that is foreign for a lot of women. We take care of everyone, our communities, our schools, our children, our job, our coworkers. We really have, I would say, a fairly tenacious ability to give to others. And that is beautiful. But giving to ourselves feels a little bit foreign to us. So this is a time to say, we're here. We have to build the self first. We have to reclaim who we are. And it's a reclaiming. It really is a reclaiming and rebuild and reevaluate who we are. And then from that loving self comes out really a truer expression of our life in our mid phases, 40, 50, 60, around there. A truer expression, a better expression in many cases, a
A
freer
better,
expression.
a better, truer, freer expression of ourselves. I love that.
Mhm.
And I think the confidence part that comes of knowing that there's options out there. And we had shared that before we recorded, I shared that I had a total hysterectomy. Well, they tried to, my doctor, she tried to save one ovary. That ovary failed within 8 weeks. And I felt those hormones just crash. So I went through this journey of hormone replacement, and there's not a one size fits all. So I love that we can talk about the impact of hormones on our sex drive.
Mhm.
And maybe you can speak to kind of how long women could expect it to take for this transition of finding the right hormone combination.
Right. So once the hormones are checked, once the woman recognizes the symptoms of perimenopause and menopause, then she can start to get help. What I see a lot of women do is women think that they're going to go through this and be on the sunny side of being postmenopausal. And in my view, as a gynecologist, there's no such thing as postmenopausal. There's either youthful hormones or a little bit messed up hormones or very deficient hormones, and you stay in that state for the rest of your life. Now, we wouldn't stay in a state of, I would say, low thyroid for the rest of our life because doctors are ready to diagnose that. They check it routinely. Hormones are not checked routinely, so women are not guided to have their hormones checked. They come in and they say, I'm depressed, I'm gaining weight, I can't sleep, I feel, and many times they are not taken seriously. Still, in this day and age, it's not recognized that a 35-year-old woman could be well into perimenopause and sometimes menopause. So regardless of the symptoms, I always check all the hormonal levels because menopause is not just a lack of ovarian hormones, it's when all the hormones start to decline. Um, so recognize the symptoms. The symptoms are you. I know you've talked to your listeners a lot about this, but hot flashes, depression, anxiety, uh, sleeplessness, awakening with sleep, OCD, feeling much more OCD, GI tract problems and stomach upset, mental confusion, the brain that doesn't focus well, cardiovascular disease. Then from the symptoms arise the diseases. And so menopause is a pressure cooker for diseases, for future diseases and future decline.
Well, I wonder, in talking about hormones, you said beyond the estrogen, are there specific things that women, our female listeners or male listeners who happen to love a woman, could say, hey, I need to ask my doctor specifically about testing for what? And
Okay.
whether it's a functional medicine or.
Yeah. So there are three major hormonal systems that I check, and I check probably 18 hormones. But the first one, of course, is the ovary. So the ovary makes estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. So I always check that. And it's just related to the sexuality of women. In menopause, testosterone starts to decrease. So we have less confidence. We definitely have less muscle mass, less bone density, and we are less sexy. We just do not think about intercourse. We don't think about the yummy, kind of body involved excitement that we used to. And so the ovarian hormones are important. Next, the thyroid hormones are important, right here in the neck, thyroid gland. So I check 5 different hormones for that. I check the free T3, free T4, reverse T3, thyroid antibodies, TSH. So I check all of those to really get a comprehensive look at thyroid. Because when the thyroid is low, we're exhausted. And when we're exhausted, we don't want to make love. We can't. The body has certain limits on it. And it's kind of like when the body's exhausted, we lose our hair. That's an accessory, an accessory part of our body. And, the body's trying to stay alive in menopause. So sexuality does fall away because of the thyroid and also the ovarian hormones, and then the adrenal hormones. These are our stress hormones. And DHEA is one of those hormones. When it drops, sexuality is much, much lower. Just like when testosterone and estrogen drop, it's much, much lower. And pregnenolone is an important hormone that keeps us happy and vital and our brain strong. So when these hormones fall and start to decline, there is a collapse of the being that we know we were. Women ask me all the time, I don't even know who I am anymore. So we're lost. And hormones create all the functions in our body. They beat our heart. They tell us when we're hungry, when we're sleepy, when we're thirsty. They maintain our blood pressure and our cardiovascular system. So when the hormones start to decrease, we have so many symptoms of menopause as well as the diseases that arise. And we just can't feel sexy without these hormones. And then, of course, our blood sugar rises and our LDL cholesterol and all the small dense particles like the ApoB and the Lp(a), we're falling apart. And sexuality comes from a healthy organism. It arises from a youthful, vital, rested being. And when all of these hormones decrease, I would say it is impossible to have a good sex drive without these hormones promoting and supporting our sexuality. And that causes terrible problems in relationships too. Men feel that they're
Oh,
their mate.
absolutely. So, women listeners, you are not crazy. You are not losing your mind. Your body is going through one of the most challenging transitions of your entire life, and there is support out there to help you through. So, if you're tired, if there's the unexpected weight gain, if it's the anxiety, the brain fog. Women over 50 are I think the number one now being diagnosed with ADHD, and
Mhm.
it's the impact. I know I was after 50. And knowing that if you're not getting good sleep and you're feeling stressed all the time, of course it's going to impact your sex drive with your partner because you're too tired to think about anything. You're just trying to get through the day and be in survival mode, right?
Survival. It's surviving menopause. I mean, that is, but rather than surviving menopause, I put forward the idea of radiance arising from this menopausal state, true radiance of the heart and of the body and of the mind and of who we are and what our potential is as beautiful beings here.
And I love because you even have like an offer. It's a free book that you have written and you're offering to women, and it's called Radiant Again and Forever. I'll put it in the show notes. We'll talk about it in just a minute. But I love that you want radiance to be a possibility. And when I was on my writing retreat this week, I took along my willow tree, and she's reaching up and she's got these sparkles, and her name is Shine.
Ooh.
And I think that's what we women need to remember, that we can rise up, we can look up, and we can be radiant and shine from the inside out. But you're going to tell us a little bit about how do we bridge that gap if we've gone to our provider, we've asked for the hormone tests, what's the next step?
Well, there's so many different areas and different ways to address this. Lifestyle is very important. So we need to sleep 8 hours, melatonin, magnesium. I will frequently prescribe 10, 15, 20 milligrams of melatonin and magnesium as well. And GABA, 500 to 750 milligrams is great. And 5-HTP, 100 to 200 milligrams is great. So really get your sleep, and supplements do help. Melatonin is an important hormone. It's an antioxidant and anti-inflammatory, and that starts to decrease as we age too. So that would be one of the lifestyle approaches. Secondly, eat well, plant-based, pasture-raised. If we're eating eggs and different types of animal protein, wild fish, I mean, my God, the farm fish is just a disaster. So eating a good, healthy, low processed food or no processed food in terms of the diet.
And I think that's an important place to pause and reiterate, because listeners, it's not that this one doctor said this one thing and this doctor said another. If anyone is listening to the news and all the stories, we need to shift from those processed foods, get to the plant-based, the natural things, watch out for the additives, the preservatives, staying on the outside of the grocery aisle, but being careful in our choices. And there's probably the next part of lifestyle coming up, but I don't want to steal your thunder. So what's next?
It's our thunder. It's our thunder. So obviously exercise. And they've done studies showing that if you do more than 5,000 steps per day, you have really a huge benefit in health. And if you go to 7,000, it's even more. Above 7,000, it doesn't seem to be a greater benefit. So moving the body and staying supple. One of the big problems that women tell me all the time is my body hurts. Not only am I too tired to get off the couch, but my body hurts so much. Now that's generally hormonal. When the thyroid is low, our body hurts. When the estrogen and testosterone are low, the body really hurts, which makes us feel definitely unsexy and definitely like we don't want to exercise. So as we start to replace the deficient hormones and the hormones that are missing, that would be adrenals, thyroid, ovarian hormones, we start to see big shifts in the body. So it's kind of like this. I have my pin here. So when estrogen is low, up goes stress. So the stress that women feel, that there's pressure on them and they have to do these things, but their mind is foggy and they can't get them done, that starts to go down. Also, inflammation starts to go down. So the body starts to feel supple and moving and wanting to dance more and to sway more and to, we just feel, we feel youthful. And then when estrogen is low, up goes the sugar levels. Now, millions of Americans have high sugar. I think it's something like 60 million at this point. But that high sugar is one of the real tragedies of being in menopause and staying in menopause. Because when your sugar is high, the body does not work. It's just, the cells are coated with sugar. So I measure that hemoglobin A1C, which is the 4-month marker for sugar damage. And then the LDL cholesterol plus all the small dense particles go up in menopause too. So we want to really take it seriously when we start to feel the very first symptoms. We want to take menopause very seriously because how you manage menopause will determine the trajectory of the next 40 years of your life or even 50 years of your life.
Absolutely. And you give hope. And I know the studies show that women go to 5 to 10 providers before they can find the person that points them in the direction. And that was like my experience. We were stationed in Germany. I went
Mhm.
to my family practice doctor and I said, I think my hormones are changing. What do we test? And like you said, she's like, we're just going to test your FSH. You're still in there. It's okay. Keep going. And
Inappropriate.
I had to dig deeper. I said, there's something going on in I don't feel well. My hair was falling out in clumps. I feel tired. I feel cranky. Things were shifting in where they were located in my body. And I wasn't looking and feeling myself, and it was impacting my relationship. So I had to keep going and I had to keep asking. And I'm so grateful there are providers and professionals like you to point women in the right direction. Hmm,
So the right direction would be individualized for each woman.
exactly.
Western medicine considers that heresy. If you're getting chemotherapy, if you're 210 pounds, you get the same dose as somebody who's basically 100 pounds. So, doctors are starting more to individualize, but this is still not one of the major tenets of Western medicine. Whereas with functional medicine and integrated health, it certainly is that one size does not fit all. So, um, finding somebody who can help you to individualize your path in terms of recovery. And oxytocin is a very important hormone, just as we replace the various hormones that are low. And testosterone is a very, very important hormone for women. It builds our muscles, our bones. It creates sexual ideation and sexual thoughts, and it gives us confidence. And it's hard to make love if you have no confidence. So testosterone is extremely important for women. I would say that 95% of women I put on testosterone in perimenopause or menopause. And then oxytocin is a lovely hormone that I learned about from Dr. Hertog out of Belgium. And it is the body's natural response to addictions. There are no side effects to it except good ones, unless your adrenals are a little bit deficient, at which point you might feel slightly tired. So I always make sure that women's adrenals are brought back to youthful vital levels, the DHEA, pregnenolone, and cortisol. And then when they have difficulty with orgasms, oxytocin causes women to have faster orgasms, more intense orgasms, and it bonds the individuals. It bonds the woman to the man or the woman to whoever their sexual partner is and create just a very, I would say, subtle but critical bonding of the partners. And, it's like, that's my partner. So giving it to men is also very helpful. I take care of men too. Very helpful in terms of helping to bond them to women and or to their partner, whatever their partner is. Um, so that's an important sexual hormone that I really love to prescribe for. Aside from the estrogen, the testosterone, the DHEA, the pregnenolone, the cortisol, the T3, the thyroid 3, the thyroid 4. So I prescribe any hormone that is deficient and that could be causing some of the symptoms. It's like an orchestra. You don't have the horn section or the violin section. It's not going to be the same. Suzanne Summers used to love saying that. She was really a wonderful proponent of women's health and just a beautiful soul.
Oh, I love that you had time with her and that you resonated so well with education, information, individualization, because it's not a one size fits all. We are certainly not a one size fits all. And I didn't even know, and I feel a little embarrassed, I didn't even know you could take replacement oxytocin, the bonding hormone. Did
Yeah.
I understand that correctly?
You absolutely understood that correctly. And not only, so I prescribe it for women who say, well, I'm drinking too much wine. This happens in menopause. We're so anxious and nervous and kind of that I just need to calm down. I just need to calm down. So women can really develop drug problems in menopause. So oxytocin calms the body, focuses us, makes us feel or allows us to feel really in the present moment. It is a present moment hormone, subtle but present moment hormone. And so the body doesn't want to become addicted. So this is one of the body's hormonal ways to remain free of addiction, which I feel is very important just to let women know that these arise in menopause due to our stress and our anger and our just, I can't deal with this anymore kind of feeling that arises from menopause.
Oh, that is so hopeful because women are turning to their wine, right? To,
Mhm.
oh, I can't handle this. Or they're taking their benzodiazepines, their anti anxiety meds,
And sleep.
and it's impacting all these things. But if we get to the root problem, then there are solutions out there. And I think it might ward off some long term negative solutions if women would have the right information to bring up to their doctor. Now, can women work with you virtually or only in person?
Well, no, I have coming out of COVID, I have a large virtual practice now. And rather than people having to fly in from, all the places that they fly in to see me from, we can do it online, which is really nice. And it's, I just love the way that there's more freedom with this. I need them to have their own gynecologist because I'm hormones. Who I am is hormones. And I would say an uplifter of who we actually are and a supporter of who that person is, that angel is who's sitting in front of me, whether it's on the screen or in person. Because who we are affects every single person around us, the communities, our jobs, our families, our friends. And we can either choose to be an uplifter or a light, or we go into this darkness where we lose ourselves and we lose our sense of peacefulness and we become, someone that we really don't like and don't want to become. There's a bitterness that happens when menopause is not corrected. So I always say correct your hormones to youthful levels for youthful vitality and youthful physiology, youthful function.
Oh, that is radiating light. And so, for our listeners, if you feel like you are stuck in the darkness and not radiating light, it's time. It's time to reach out to someone who can shine the path, shine light on your path to
Mm.
find that light that's inside you. And if you're over on the YouTube channel watching us, I'm looking right at you. You are worth it. You have light in you. It is not too late. It's never too late. And we're going to shift about the fears of hormone replacement because there were some studies years ago that were not really valid. And there were a lot of fears put into women that you can't be on these kinds of hormones for this amount of time. Could you speak to that to allay the fears of?
So in the mid 1940s, there were groups of researchers who wanted to help women in menopause, and it was really a laudable thing to do because they were giving electroshock to women at that point for the depression and rage and moods, and also committing them to institutions where they would be taken care of. So the therapy was extremely primitive. We barely had a word for hormone at that point. Now I'm talking about the 1940s. Antibiotics came into our Western being in 1920s. So we just didn't have that kind of knowledge. So they were experimenting with rabbits and all kinds of different animals, and they landed on the pregnant horse's urine seemed to give benefits to women. And that stayed, it was called Premarin. Prem is pregnant, mare is horse, in is urine. So that became a number one selling medication in the United States. Um, and I was trained with that at USC. There were really no other hormones that were available. Um, so when I was going back and forth between Germany and France in my very early training in private practice or career in private practice, and in Europe they were starting to use these bioidentical hormones, which were the same hormones that we made. So very early in my practice, around 1983, I gave up using Premarin. Unless somebody absolutely, wanted to stay on Premarin, then fine. I mean, that's also their decision. But in 2001, there was a big study that came out showing that Premarin and Provera, which was a synthesized progesterone, were dangerous. And this went around the globe like I don't know, a cannon that just exploded everybody's myths about hormones being helpful for women. Um, and the breast cancer incidence was much higher on the Premarin and Provera uh, segment of this big study. What they found so everyone became afraid of hormones. It causes breast cancer, it increases dementia, it increases all kinds of stroke and cardiovascular effects as well as diabetes. And that came out of the study. However, they did find that Premarin alone actually had benefits on the breast. And women who were on that leg of Premarin alone, not Premarin plus Provera plus nothing, that was what the study was, no hormones, that they had some benefits. So they started another study for 20 years with Premarin only. Now, this is the drug company that makes Premarin doing these studies because they wanted to be vindicated that it wasn't increasing breast cancer. And after 20 years, 2 years ago, the study was published showing that breast cancer was significantly decreased with the Premarin. Now, I do not recommend Premarin. It is your mother's hormones that were, and we now have the bioidentical hormones from pharmaceutical companies in different gels and in the patch, and also made by compounding pharmacists, where they just put the FDA approved hormone in creams and things like that. So the studies have consistently shown that not only is diabetes less and heart disease less and dementia less. You interviewed Dr. Dale Bredesen. I mean, he is a luminary in this field and has personally told me, Prudence, I'm very happy that you are giving these patients estrogen to help prevent dementia. So not only those benefits, but also many studies support, like the Premarin study did, a decrease in breast cancer. Now, I would say one of the really great books to read on that is Estrogen Matters. It's by Avram Blooming. He's just retired, but was at USC on the faculty, and really a breast cancer oncologist. And the tie-up with that, hundreds of studies. I mean, so many studies you can't even begin to gork all those studies that they quote, showed how important estrogen is for the body in terms of the bones and everything, and as well as decreased breast cancer, or at least not greater breast cancer. I mean, there's one kind of study that looked at a number of studies and said, well, 1 in 50 women more might have breast cancer, but there are many, many studies that say that that's not true. And when you look at the decrease in dementia, the increased bone density and all the death from broken bones, and cardiovascular disease, which is the number one cause of death in women, when you start sort of looking at that scale, it's like hormones are essential for us to thrive and be healthy. They're an essential component. How does the body even work without hormones? So when people say hormones are dangerous, I say, yeah, if you lose them all at once, you're going to die very rapidly.
Yeah, because I went into surgical menopause within 8 weeks post-surgery, I wish that on no one, I will tell you. And then it took a while. It took about a year and a half for me to find kind of the right balance. And I have been on Premarin and I have done bioidenticals, and I have found that bioidentical testosterone for me is an essential component to add. Um, wow, that's just important. And I think back to your point on the fear of causing breast cancer with hormones. The studies now are showing that, 1 in 8 women will have breast cancer in their life. So I want women to know that, and male listeners, if you're hearing the, well, 1 in 50 could possibly get it, then you need to really hear, though, that the studies of just women in general, not on hormone replacement, but the incidence of breast cancer is very different. So I want people to be informed in making their choices, to not get stuck on, well, 1 in 50 chance, I better stay away from that. It's like, well, if the mass population is 1 in 8, what would you say?
Only one study. I mean, that was sort of one analysis of the situation. And Dr. Blooming says that even when women have had breast cancer, he feels that estrogen and replacement with the bioidentical hormones, or the same hormones that our body is making, is absolutely okay. And in my practice, I have 4 women out of thousands, I'm talking 30, 40,000 women who have had a heart attack, the #1 cause of death in women. They're all alive. They're all thriving and running around. 3 of them aren't on medication. And that is an extraordinary statistic. And one person with a stroke. Unfortunately, she survived. It's not an unfortunate story. She survived. She lost 100 pounds of weight and is in the love of her life now and is very, very happy. Wonderful woman, just wonderful woman. So the diseases of women and death promoting diseases dramatically decrease with hormone replacement, with natural hormones.
Well, there we go, because I'm going to tie us back into the kind of bringing sexy back within yourself and radiating that sexuality. And if you're just a listener, I'm just going to encourage you, pop over to the YouTube channel at Women's Midlife Network so that you can see how absolutely radiant Dr. Prudence Hall is, as she's encouraging each of us to speak up, find the provider that's going to find the solution of kind of not magic, it's a formula, right, of finding the right mixture of the different hormones that we need to look and feel good. I've learned so much, Dr. Prudence Hall. um,
It is my pleasure. And I'd like to just kind of conclude by saying it is within us. Everything is within us. And menopausal women tend to blame this and that. It's outside of ourselves. And that's a dead end road. That's not the path that is going to bring us to this place of radiance. It is doing our own work, learning about what we love. As Joseph Collins says, follow your bliss, become the person that you have always wanted to be. And menopause is the time for that. The mental stimulation and the exploration. I've done years of work in terms of searching out who am I and what is my mission and what am I all about. And that inner knowledge is what propels us to this state of grace, I would call it, a state of pure love and giving and being in service and the truth of woman, of who we can be. And each of us are different pearls. My patients, after their hormones have been balanced, have started orphanages and schools and climbed Mount Kilimanjaro and written books, and just incredible things come out of a healthy, balanced, beautiful body that has lots of energy. And this is the gift of not only our sexuality that returns, or that we never lose, but also this bigness of being that comes out of menopause.
oh, what a rich encouragement that you have given us of tapping into that state of grace and rich mission and purpose with our lives, and how that will impact not just us, not just our families. These are global movement opportunities, and not that everyone has to start an orphanage. We're not saying that. And not everyone has to write a book, but tap into that dream of what you were created to be. And I think that is beautiful. We can not only enjoy a thriving sex life with a loving partner. I'm trying to hold back a little bit of emotion. But I'm so grateful that we can have conversations with professionals and providers like you to demystify and to shine that light of hope, because there are just way too many women around the globe who are suffering in silence and not finding the people that will listen and believe and provide solutions to move forward. Yeah.
That is beautiful, just beautiful. And at any age, I take care of people who are 80, who are 90, and who finally start to feel much more like themselves. It doesn't matter. Ideally in perimenopause, ideally, but anytime this can be reversed and changed.
Anytime it can be reversed and changed. And your sexuality and feeling sexy can be restored. Some lifestyle changes, what we're eating, what we're drinking, how we're hydrating, our hormones, their balanced state, managing our sleep, managing our stress, and moving forward to shine. Oh, Dr. Prudence Hall, thank you so much. And how can people find you? I think you've got two different ways.
So I have a newer website called Dr. Prudence Hall, and then also the Hall Center. And I'd love you to download my free book that I wrote for you. Suzanne Summers coached me on that book. Actually,
And
to please her, So it's a good book on menopause and perimenopause and the birth control pill and low thyroid, and using my patients as examples, really very specific patients. So that's for free, guys. And I'm here to educate and here to bring more love into the world. And we're all allies in this. So
oh, well, I love how you connected and supported Suzanne Summers as well, and how she reciprocally supported you. And that's what women do for each other through this phase of life. So thank you, Dr. Prudence Hall of the Hall Center. Oh, look her up, y'all. Until next time.
thank you so much. Such a pleasure.